I have discussed in past videos and posts the idea of the cube. In those posts, I have avoided a finely detailed description of what these cubes are, or what they might represent. The reason for this is that, as it is the case with all things within the rational perspective, trying to describe this phenomenon can be more unhelpful than helpful. What I mean by this is that by giving this phenomena certain characteristics and boundaries, in order to try and describe it, I end up creating and propping up characteristics that, depending on the perceiver's viewpoint and understanding, may not be entirely accurate. Indeed, these attempts at description through categorization and compartmentalization can end up being destructive, because they force a definition that may not be the most accurate possible, due to slight individual perceptive variations. So with that said, I will try my best to explain this phenomena from my perspective. And from my perceptive point therefore, what these cubes represent is a powerful transdimensional portal, or portals, encapsulated within the framework of a three-dimensional world. First of all, the cube is the perfect representation of three-dimensional space. Within it we can see the x, y, and z coordinates, and how these are perceived spatially within this dimension. As such, the cube is a symbolic representation of this world, and at the same time it is a representation of a dimensional door encapsulated, some might say altered, by this dimensional plane. In order to understand the nuances of this dimensional door correctly, it must be realized first of all, that there are transdimensional forces that cross into this three-dimensional plane on a regular basis. These forces are called transdimensional, because they are able to accomplish something that very, very few humans are able to achieve, or even able to perceive in the correct manner, and that is the ability to move from this three-dimensional space, this three-dimensional plane of existence, and into another one. When these transdimensional forces move from their plane of existence into ours, they leave a plane of existence that has different physical rules than the ones that we have in this one. Because of these different physical rules, what they look like, quite simply, in their dimensional plane, and what they look like in this one, is completely different. So when those forces cross into this three-dimensional world, they are forced by the very forces that shape and maintain this dimensional plane, to change shape themselves. You could think of it, sort of like a submarine traveling deep into the dark sea. The lower that it descends into the dark cold ocean, the more that it is affected by the great pressure of the water above it. The great pressures found in the deep ocean are so powerful, that they can quite literally crush the vessel. A submarine therefore, that wishes to travel deeply into the dark ocean, must be constructed in such a way that it can withstand these pressures. In this same way, these forces that are traveling from one dimension to another, must create a capsule, or a vessel of sorts, that is able to withstand the pressures of this new dimensional plane. But no matter how powerful this capsule, the pressures inherent in this new dimensional plane, will overtake this capsule and force it into new shapes and dimensions. The cube then, is a portal. It is a portal that may exist in one particular place in space and time, or it can also be a more mobile capsule, that is able to move within this three-dimensional plane in ways that sometimes defy physical explanation. This capsule, whether moving or stationary, can have many functions. Oftentimes, very large ones which are quite often stationary within our three-dimensional space, are doors or portals that allow for huge amounts of transdimensional travel. By this I mean that they can either allow for a great deal of traffic to come through, or that they can allow for very large entities, from our three-dimensional physical perspective, to move and manipulate within this world. Oftentimes, the smaller capsules, that are represented by a flying cube, are capsules that allow for the containment of a different dimensional reality, within this dimensional plane. You can think of these capsules sort of like a raindrop falling from the sky. The raindrop, because of the physical forces affecting it, takes on the form of a sphere, and indeed outside of this raindrop there is a different type of world than the kind of world inside the raindrop, being that the raindrop is in and of itself a small watery world. Within this little watery world, there could exist large amounts of microbial life that could not exist in the open air. But, being that they are contained within this capsule of water, they are able to thrive for a little while, as they make their journey from one point in space to the other. This is what the flying cube represents, and this is what the cube is. It is represented as a cube then, because the cube is a metaphor for the three-dimensional capsule, that these portals must become within this plane. Now, this does not mean that these flying capsules will necessarily look like cubes. It means that these capsules must take on three-dimensional qualities when they project into this plane. These cubes, which are portals to other dimensions then, can be dangerous to human life. This is so because they can be used to move a person from one dimensional plane into another, or they can be used to trap a person within one of these smaller cubes. And once a person is trapped inside one of these little worlds, they cannot escape, and these people then become slaves, to be used by the occupants of that cube for nefarious purposes. And it must be noted that this three-dimensional plane, this physical earth plane where we currently reside, is also a prison for us humans, because we are bound to it, and must exist entire lifetimes following physical laws within it, that greatly limit our potential. The adoration of the cube by some groups is not just the adoration of those entities that control the encapsulated portals to other dimensions, but it can be at times the adoration of the three-dimensional prison that is kept shut by the biggest of these abusive transdimensional forces. But, as I have mentioned in other videos, we humans are not helpless. We can learn to see these walls, and we can also learn how to go about escaping them, and moving into other more dynamic realities. There is always hope, and I am confident that in the future we will move into greater realms, more expansive dimensions, as a species. If you would like to know more about the transdimensional aspects of energy, and about the biggest non-organic entity currently engaged in manipulating humanity through these gateways, I recommend the book Overcoming the Archon through Alchemy. I will leave a link to it in the video description below.